Hello, everyone. I meant to talk about the uh, recent Rockstar slash Take Two controversy revolving around their updated terms of service regarding mods. Short version is I've been busy with other things in terms of like talking about New World, Battlefield, or other important matters. And in addition to that, I've also had to take care of my health. The two combined have made it difficult to get around to it, but now that I've gotten all the backlog out of the way, I can finally talk about this, and I think it is important to talk about. Okay, so let me go ahead and explain why I'm getting Bethesda involved in this explanation, because Bethesda is an older um, issue. I think that there are going to be people wondering this, so I just want to nip that in the bud before anybody asks why I'm bringing up Bethesda alongside Rockstar. And the reason is that Bethesda and Rockstar have shared the exact same problems or mistakes in that they've tried to monetize mods and it hasn't worked out for them. The other reason, too, is because Skyrim is a great example of modders at work. The thing that these companies fail to realize, at least appear to fail to recognize, is that modding extends the life of a game by an exceptional margin. Skyrim has been around since what, 2012, and there's still people modding it to this day. As a matter of fact, you could go watch Twitch streams of people modding Skyrim because they still do it. So, um, these are great examples to look at for that. But let me go ahead and move on because there is one important topic that I need to discuss kind of related to mods. I have to tab over, so give me a second. Let's see. Here we are. Okay. I imagine that people are probably tired of me talking about Linux, but I have to bring up at least this very small portion. So I'll just focus on this portion rather than talk about Linux as a whole. So, quick recap, and sorry about my phone going off. I was not expecting to receive messages at this point in the morning, but anyways. So, Proton is the software on Steam's end that allows Linux people, or users, I should say, to play their Steam games on Linux. That's what Proton is in a nutshell. Unfortunately, though, there are times where Proton runs into problems, and you need tools to fix said problems. I've highlighted this text because this is an example of what I'm talking about. This is user reports for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's really weird that Bloodlines seems to function worse than Redemption, given that Redemption's older, but whatever. Anyways, so Proton Tricks is a tool to essentially force the game to work. That would be the oversimplified explanation to what Proton Tricks is. So tools like that are necessary. Now, why I'm bringing up Proton Tricks is because this goes to show that making a terms of service against modding is detrimental for more than one reason. It's detrimental to the health of the game and or its life cycle. It's also detrimental to people who make these kinds of tools. By definition, a tool like Proton Tricks is a mod because Proton Tricks alters the behavior of the game, which is one of the definitions of a mod. That means these terms of service that Rockstar Games makes, and of course Bethesda, will make it difficult to create tools like Proton Tricks should the game run into an issue. That out of the way, let me go and tab over. Let's see. Yes, I need this. Okay. Okay, I want to quickly mention the Skyblivion project as another example, because as I said earlier in the recording, that Skyrim is a great example of mods extending the life of a game. Sky Oblivion is going to be another example I want to bring up because this is perhaps one of the largest modding projects that I'm aware of. What Skyblivion is, more or less, this is probably going to be oversimplified, is it's putting the Skyrim engine into Oblivion. Essentially, they're trying to remaster Oblivion, which I'm all for because I thought Oblivion was far better than Skyrim for a number of reasons. I think Bethesda kind of lost their touch with making games after a while. That's a completely different discussion, but the point I'm bringing up here is the Skyblivion project is yet another case example of mods attempting to increase the lifespan when a game gets abandoned by its creators. Another thing, too, I kind of want to bring up here, this is not going to be just Skyblivion in general, but this is going to be Skyblivion plus really any mod. So while I think this is a great example, I do want to talk about one other topic, and that is the care and love that goes into these mods. Because Skyblivion and all the mods out there, whether they be for Skyrim or GTA 5, there is modders who put their time and effort to do it right because they are fans of these games and they enjoy playing these games. So you're going to get more of a passionate mod or well-built mod out of these people than any company can produce because of them being players in that game. So you have to understand that this whole modding topic goes well beyond just examples like Skyblivion or things like that. I can bring up tons of examples of life extension, but the other topic that we have to mention here is the amount of care and love that goes into these mods. That's what I'm trying to bring up here, because it's just one of many topics that need to be discussed when bringing up these examples or when discussing a topic such as a terms of service change that prevents modding. Okay, with that out of the way, let me just tab over again, 1 second. Okay. I wanted to make sure that I was tabbed over because I do have to physically remove myself from the microphone, or, well, my spot near the microphone, because just the way this setup is, I actually have to pick up the keyboard, mouse, and tab over. But anyways, I'll get into that in a minute. I want to quickly go over something just so you all understand my position. As I've mentioned before in prior recordings, I used to be a video game and tabletop tester. I did both. I know it may not seem like it because of my inability to keep focused or, explain things well, but I did at one point, when my health was better, did test video games as well as tabletop games. So while I'm very passionate about ensuring that games do better, because obviously the quality of the games has slipped dramatically over the last couple of years, in my opinion, I do try to balance this passion with my knowledge of the video game industry. Like it or not, video games have gotten super expensive to make. Whether or not that expense is part of greed, we'll never know. Unfortunately, there's a lot of information that's kept private, which will prevent us from understanding where the cost came from or things like that. But I just want to make it real clear before I get into this mess that I try to balance the passion of seeing games do better with my knowledge of the video game industry. So with that out of the way, let me quickly get into what's on screen now. There's one element I need to bring up here that I think is not really mentioned when, channels like Legacy Killer HD or the others decide to do a recording on this. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that Legacy Killer HD is great. I listen to his videos all the time, and I think that he does a really great job of explaining the situation, bringing up the news, and things like that. But I think one thing that gets overlooked with Legacy Killer HD and other channels that are kind of like his is the cost of video games. So I can understand from a business perspective and as someone from the video game industry that there is a reason that video games are trying to make money. It's because it costs a lot. Now, obviously, greed does play a factor in certain cases, but again, it's really hard to know when greed's at play versus when trying to ensure they have the money to do things is at play. So I've brought this up as just some examples here to show you just the cost of video games these days. And you can see there's a whole bunch of lists here. You're more than welcome to Google it. As you can see, it's not really hard to find. You just type in the same thing I did, which was most expensive video games to make. Something as simple as that wording into a Google search engine will net you the same results. But I'm going to go ahead and use Wikipedia's page because this chart by Wikipedia happens to be fairly accurate, if not 100% accurate. So let me type over again. Okay, so as you can see, we're in the triple digits millions worth to make some of these games, and you can see a good example listing here. I know Cyberpunk was a fail of a video game, so you don't need to remind me, but as you can see, even something as much of a failure as Cyberpunk took, what was that? 316 million. It took $316 million to make a failure of a game like Cyberpunk. So I want you to understand that the cost to make games are exceptionally high. And again, I don't know what the factors are, and we likely will never know as to what makes it so high. But I do want to point out that we're talking triple digits millions here to make games. So I do understand the need to monetize. I do understand the need to make money somewhere. Now, how they handle it, though, that is where the line is drawn. Because obviously, if they're egregious with it or something, then that's a problem. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about some examples as to what I don't think is egregious. Okay, so if a game is trying to, well, I should say a game studio is trying to make money to, say, remaster a game. We'll use Oblivion, for example. So let's just say that Bethesda picked up on the Skyblivion project and they realized that they want to beat them to the punch, which I hope they don't do this. But let's just say that they did detect that and they want to beat them to the punch and make their own remaster of Oblivion. Well, then that money has to come from somewhere. So more than likely in that scenario, they would monetize Skyblivion's end. So, I'm sorry, not Skyblivion, Skyrim. So they would monetize Skyrim to make the money to make that remaster, which would make complete sense. Now, again, it depends on how they do the monetization is where the line is drawn. So I think the best way to handle it is not so much monetizing the mods, but maybe monetizing the mod kit. If it absolutely comes to it, if it's absolutely necessary, I think it's okay to monetize the mod kits. I don't think that it's okay to monetize every single mod that's produced because then that's going to hurt creativity. There are tons of different people with similar ideas or similar mods that accomplish the objective in different ways. So let's just say a particular gamer prefers mod A's approach versus mod B approach. I think that they should be given the freedom to choose mod A because that's what they like. So monetizing every single mod is not how it should be done. I think that it should be done as a monetization on the mod kit. Now, to further this, I think there's something else you can do. And I will do my best to avoid the whole Linux explanation, but I think that Linux is a great example in this case. So one of the issues that will present itself is that Linux will have trouble modding. Because most of your modders are used to modding video games on Windows, not Linux. Now that Linux has gotten a ton of support, not just from Steam, but NVIDIA and now Easy Anti-Cheat, the odds of people being on Linux is going to happen exponentially more than it already has. So here's something that they could do to make the money worth it when monetizing the mod kit, and that is providing actual support to a platform like Linux. Because let's just say you throw out a mod kit and it's only for Windows. Okay, well, that's good and all, but is it really worth the cost, depending on what that cost is? And my answer is going to be no. If you're going to charge money for a mod kit, then it needs to be versatile in that it's allowing the modder to not only work with Windows, but Linux as well. Because if you have a mod kit that's allowing you to work with 2 different platforms, now the cost of that mod kit has grown exponentially, and it's now more worth it because of the flexibility you're affording mod creators. That's the example I'm trying to get to here. And I do think that more companies need to support Linux because it's clear that Windows is just too greedy. Well, I should say Microsoft. Microsoft in general is too greedy. And you're not going to really get a good gaming experience over time with Windows as you would with Linux. Case in point is Windows 11. As Jay's 2 cents point out in his video, AMD Ryzen is suffering a 15% performance loss, and he thinks that it's because Microsoft spent more time with Intel and optimizing for Intel that they've left AMD completely out of the mix. Is more or less what he was saying in his video. I would recommend watching his video as there's a much lengthier explanation involved, and maybe you'll get more of an idea as to what's going on, but that's the point I'm trying to make here. So, the great thing about Linux in comparison to Windows is their ability to be open source. Because they're open source, that means you can make the modifications necessary and completely avoid these kinds of problems if need be in certain circumstances. But again, I won't go into a lengthy explanation regarding Linux. I just want to give you some case examples so that you understand how important this is. But really, that's all I can say on the matter. Thanks for listening.